Welcome to the Wellness Growth Show. Today's guest is Christina Rama, co founder and president of Fownd, the team behind Notation, a PT first AI that drafts notes in real time and nudges clinicians to capture what payers need without derailing the session. Christina is a practicing PT of 15 plus years who lived the documentation grind, lunches, evenings, even weekends lost to notes, and decided there had to be a better way. Notation runs alongside your EMR in the browser so you can see the note build as you treat. It's EMR agnostic with simple plugins and thoughtful privacy choices. With HIPAA Today and HIPAA SOC 2 certification, work in progress. So, under the hood is a PT specific model, not just a generic wrapper, which helps preserve clinical reasoning. Early users report saving roughly 1 to 2 hours per clinician per day. So we'll impact the origin story, how it works at the point of care, adoption tips, and what's next as Found expands beyond outpatient into home health and more. So Christina, welcome to the show.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me today, Scott.
Yes, absolutely. Excited for this. So what was that exact moment? Like we have to fix the documentation, the light bulb that went on for you as a clinician, like a patient day or late night of notes.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think for me it was like this one moment. It was kind of like a pattern that I just couldn't ignore anymore. I loved being a PT, but like you said, I was constantly ending the day with like a backlog of notes that followed me into lunches, evenings, and then even sometimes weekends. And, at first I'd blame myself. I thought, man, I just need to work faster or be more efficient. But then I realized every PT around me was feeling pretty much the same pressure. And what really hit me was when I started to see great therapists cut back or leave patient care, not because they didn't love it, but because it wasn't sustainable for them anymore. And that's when it shifted from I need to get better at notes to we need to fix the way documentation actually works. And that thinking is what eventually came, found and notation.
Ah, I mean, PTs are so important, and it saddens me to hear like they probably get just so frustrated with the documentation and they leave. It's like this is not what I signed up for. It's like you want to care for patients. So kudos on this. So
Thank you.
when a PT days when a PT's day gets swallowed by documentation, where does the time actually go, and what's the downstream cost on energy, family time, and patient care?
Yeah, I think it's kind of all those small tasks pile up and it's not just one thing. Like it's not just the documentation that is the issue. It's also just trying to find where things are in an EMR, putting the same story in multiple sections, adding goals, exercises, education, that follow a familiar pattern but still take time to customize for each patient. And then trying to also remember measurements hours later because there wasn't time to capture them in the moment. And that's when you start to see that spillover where a lunch turns into a documentation block, a few minutes between patients disappears. You tell yourself, hey, I'm going to finish these tonight so that I'm caught up. And suddenly your evening is catching up on notes instead of spending time with family. And clinically, I think that adds a mental load where you know, things may get left vague or left incomplete, which means there's more follow up, more addendums, or even more back and forth with billing and payers later.
So
Yeah.
Okay, so explain it like I'm chairside. Walk us through a typical eval using notation, say from the moment you turn it on to the end of
Mhm.
the visit review. So when does it listen? When does it suggest? And when are you editing in real time?
Yeah. So the idea for us was to change the when and how a note gets done without changing how you like to treat. So a typical eval would look like this. You open up your EMR, or if your EMR is already open, great. Then you can open up notation in a browser tab next to it. You really don't need any patient details to get going unless you want to put it in there. So then at the start of the visit, you get consent to use our platform, pick a note type and body part, and you hit start. And then from there, you just do your eval as normal as possible. So you just talk with your patient, and then notation will listen and start building the subjective as you're having that conversation. And you'll actually see the subjective taking shape as you have that conversation. And then along that, we have these little smart chips that will highlight the key topics that the payers expect to see so that if something's missing, you'll get that gentle nudge so that you can catch it while the patient's still in the room and not trying to get it later.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah. And then the objective section, that's usually where the bulk of information or the bulk of the time is taken up. And we tried to make that as flexible as possible. So if you're with a patient and you need to shout a measurement out loud, you can do that and it'll drop into a table. If you want to type something, you can. If you need to paste something in, you can. If you like to just do shorthand and jot something down, then our platform can turn that into an actual sentence. So it's really whatever is fastest for you. And then, of course, moving into the last two parts, the assessment and plan of a note, it'll help organize your clinical reasoning and next steps. And that includes us suggesting goals, codes, exercises. So it's basically designed to stay out of your way, but still guide you through everything that matters for clarity, compliance, billing. And so by the end of the visit, the draft's there. You review it, sign off, move on. It's not about replacing your thinking. It's just about giving you a head start so you're not documenting everything from scratch after a full day of patient.
I love it. I love it. And can you just briefly, because I know the PTs that are listening, they're gonna know what an EMR is, but what
Yeah.
can you kind of maybe just touch on that real quick?
Yeah. So it's called an electronic medical record. And we're not an EMR, like you said, we run alongside. So some of the more popular EMRs would be like WebPT, Raintree, Prompt for physical therapists. And it's basically a whole platform where they can schedule and do billing and do notes all in one place. So we just focus on the note part and we're not focusing on the scheduling or the billing as much right now.
So
Mhm.
many tools generate a blob to kind of like fix later. What
Mhm.
changes when the note builds visibly during the session, and then how does that reduce after visit kind of cleanup, I guess?
Yeah. So what really changes when the whole note builds during the session is the feeling of just kind of staying in sync with the visit. Like you kind of mentioned, a lot of AI tools create the note after the fact. You finish the session and then you see the draft for review. And with notation, you see the note form as you go. So any small corrections can happen naturally in the moment instead of becoming an extra task later. I think it also can build a different level of trust because you can kind of watch the note come together and you already know what's being captured and how it fits into your reasoning, and then there's no guessing or sorting through the paragraphs afterward. And I think that's what makes the end of the visit review so quick because the structure of the reasoning, the payer required pieces are already aligned with what happened. And you're not fixing a transcript, you're just putting your voice on a draft that was pretty much already there.
Hmm. Okay. And then those chips that nudge required elements for insurance, what do they
Mhm.
catch most often, and how has that affected like denials or rework?
So the chips are there just to kind of keep the note complete and clinically clear. So it's basically just kind of the pieces the payer expect to see. So, and they stay visible during the visit, just underneath everything that you can kind of see coming together. And they light up when something's been addressed and they'll stay dim if it hasn't. So we try to make it not another checklist or something you really have to keep a lot of tabs on. It's just kind of a quiet way to make sure that you're getting those pieces without breaking your flow. And actually, because of that, we have seen clinicians getting fewer clarifications or follow up requests from insurance companies.
Oh, that's huge. That's great. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you built a PT specialized model rather than a generic wrapper.
Yeah.
What PT nuances did that unlock? Like assessments, goals, objective measures that I guess general kind of AI was missing?
Yeah, so obviously generic AI is a great generalist, but for a clinic we need a specialist. So, that's why we built our own PT specific model. A lot of models we've noticed are putting like a wrapper on OpenAI or Google. But the way we're doing it, it gives us control over how the PT language is understood, how the note is structured, and very importantly, how we protect patient information. So in practice, this means that our model understands how PTs actually talk and reason. So, like I mentioned before, the shorthand or how a session flows, and even our platform can understand when languages switch. So it follows the logic behind the visit, and it doesn't just transcribe. So it understands like the clinic relevance of what the findings are, and that will influence the assessment and what that means for things like goals, codes, and the plan. So I think that's the difference. If a model doesn't understand PT, you'll just get like a transcript. When it does understand PT, you start with a draft that's already making sense clinically.
Okay. So how fast can a clinic start? And a couple questions in this. What does HIPAA today look like? What's the path of R2, HIPAA, SOC 2, like the formal
Mhm.
certification? And how do the one-click EMR plugins work day to day?
Yeah, so I'll get to all those little pieces. I'll start with how clinics can get started. So we designed this so clinics don't really need a big IT project to try it. It runs right next to your browser, like we mentioned. So there's really nothing to install, nothing you have to integrate. So you can just open it and choose your note type and go. So we've made it as easy as possible to just use it. As far as privacy, that is something we focused on early on. HIPAA and SOC 2 is how we protect patient information. So having the therapist be able to control when the platform runs and having the consent of the patient is important. And we don't have any background listening either. So the PT knows when it's on and when it's not. And then the draft is generated during the visit. So we don't actually have to store any patient information, but we have that ability if a clinic or PT wants that for their workflow. And then if we do take on patient information and store it, everything stays within their clinic and our platform. It never goes to an outside third party AI service. And so, with all that, we built it with HIPAA from day one, and we're actually in the final steps of HIPAA and SOC 2 certification now. So, yeah.
Good, good. I hope that happens soon for you. So the time dividend, you've said PTs are getting back about 1 to 2 hours per day.
Mhm.
Where I guess where do they feel that the time, like the most or the fewer after hour notes or more same day completions or more patient slots, maybe? Like what?
Yeah. So I think the time can come back in some very real ways. And I think the biggest shift we see is that notes aren't following the PTs home anymore, which is that time is huge, right? Like that when you go home, that should be your time. You're off the clock, right? So we've found that most clinicians finish their documentation not just by the end of the day, but by the end of the session with the patient. So that does make evenings feel different. You're not worried about trying to finish up notes at the end of the day. And I think it also changes the rhythm of the clinic day too. Instead of carrying yesterday's charting in today, if you weren't able to get to it in the evening for whatever reason, your notes are closed the same day, which keeps everything fresher and also reduces that stress of just feeling constantly behind. And then when that time comes back, clinics can use it in whatever way makes sense for them. So, like you mentioned, if for them it means opening up more slots, they can do that. If it means protecting lunch or giving the PT some buffer time, they can do that. And for others, it might just be focusing on making the day feel more sustainable for PT so they don't burn out. But I think what's important is it gives them that flexibility that they didn't have before. They have the options to do those things which they might not have had before.
It's kind of like imagine the things you could do with this extra
Right.
time? Like, do you have maybe thought of before, or where it's like it's been on your list kind of thing, and then it keeps like staying on your list, and then you're like, whoa, I could actually get to that, and that feeling of
Exactly.
accomplishing that. So okay.
Yeah.
So skeptical clinicians make or break rollouts.
Mhm.
What single onboarding tip moves someone from one more tool, oh my gosh, right, to
Right,
I'm
yeah.
never going back?
So I think the most effective thing we found is just to make it as low pressure as possible. So we'll say to that skeptical clinician, don't change how you treat, just turn it on for a week, do your visits as you normally would, and then just look at the draft afterwards. So we try to respect their style, and then it can show right away whether the draft feels usable. Most people notice pretty quickly that the note is largely done, and then they're just doing some edits here and there, and instead of having to build the whole note from scratch. And I think that's usually when that switch flips from why do I need this to why would I go back? We also try to keep the onboarding light. So if it doesn't feel natural after a short walkthrough and a couple real patients, then we take that on. Like that's on us. And we'll act on that feedback quickly and make the product easier to use.
Okay. I like that. And I like that you said you mentioned, keeping their style, and we're not
Yeah.
you're just trying to kind of assist and help them. We're trying to not change anything what you're doing. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's important for PTs because everybody has their own way that they prefer to treat and document. And, with EMRs not really respecting that flow as much as we would like sometimes, having something that is less of a barrier to that, I think is important.
Okay. So thinking of like an owner with maybe say 3 to 9 PTs across
Mhm.
clinics, like, how do you recommend starting? So just like thinking, talk monthly versus per session options, or enterprise agreements, and then kind of like that 30-day try it approach that you've offered.
Yeah, so for a clinic that size, I would usually recommend, like you mentioned, a simple 30-day pilot with a small group. And if they want to add in more people within that time, that's fine too. But maybe start with 3 people, a lead PT, someone who's skeptical, and then maybe someone who's also excited because you want kind of all the different perspectives. And then just run it along your normal schedule and look at a few easy metrics. What does after hours documentation look like? What does the same day note completion look like? And most importantly, how do the clinicians feel at the end of the day? So we do try to keep our pricing pretty straightforward. So we do have a small monthly subscription and per visit usage so that clinics only pay for what they actually use. And for any organization, we can do enterprise plan as well if they need something that has more structure, that's fine too. And then for anyone who's curious, the first month is free. So the teams can try it with real patients before even having to make the decision of whether they want to
The
move
investment.
forward or not. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
What a way to start off the new year with something like a tool that is going to do all this for you. I love it. So
Yeah.
what categories are most exciting to partner with? I mean, because I know it's PTs, yes, but like home exercise program libraries type things. I've got some notes. Remote monitoring, and
Yeah.
then where's Found headed next?
So we're excited about partnerships that streamline any of the therapist's workflow. So, we're open to partnering with the EMRs as well. If there's an EMR that would like to integrate with us, we're open to that. Like you said, we would love to partner with individual PTs, but also multi site clinic groups. And then as far as tools, we are interested in ones that support home exercise. Again, you said remote therapeutic monitoring, and maybe even ones that do like outcomes, or in workman's comp, there's some tests that they do. So we would be interested in integrating with that area as well. So we would just love to connect anything therapists already use into one flow so that information doesn't end up getting stuck in all the different places. We just want to make things as easy as possible.
Okay.
And then from a roadmap standpoint, voice was our first step. And we're actually now adding computer vision. So that will help support the home exercise and remote therapeutic monitoring by giving therapists a better look at how patients are performing between visits. And I think the computer vision will also be important for capturing some of the measurable parts of an in-person session, like range of motion or how a patient's moving or walking, so that over time the documentation becomes more and more hands off. Um, and right now
That's
we're
exciting.
in, yeah,
More
and
exciting
right
stuff.
now we're only in outpatient,
Okay.
but we're actually growing into home health right now too.
Okay.
So
Great.
yeah, and
I love
then
it. Okay.
yeah, we got a lot of exciting things coming up.
Okay. So give listeners confidence in the build. Who's behind the tech, and how does that expertise show up in the product quality and support?
So we built our team very intentionally. So we did kind of start with clinicians. So we have practicing PTs that help set the logic. And then our engineering team created everything around that. We're solving a clinician problem. So we thought it only makes sense to build it with the people who live it every day. So we let the PTs kind of decide what stays in the note, what stays out, and how the flow should match a real session. And then our engineering team brings the AI to life. They're incredibly skilled in AI, machine learning, and computer vision. And so they've built everything that you see today, the PT specific large language model, the real time drafting platform, and then, of course, the computer vision layer that's coming next. So I think that combination of clinicians defining the guardrails, PT led design shaping the workflow, and engineers building the strong AR around it is what keeps the whole platform aligned with how care is actually delivered.
So if a clinic's EMR is clunky, how do you still make it seamless with the plugin approach?
Yeah, that's a very good question because sometimes you're like, how do I work around what I have to work with, which would be your EMR? So you actually, with our platform, you don't have to adopt your EMR's workflow. You can kind of follow the flow of a visit like how we do in our platform. So you almost adopt our flow, which we try to keep it your flow, if that makes sense. So basically, notation will structure the note for you, and then you press the button to drop it into your EMR in one step. So it removes the extra navigation, um, and makes even a clunky EMR feel more simple because we're kind of taking a step around their flow and we just fill in the all the fields for you.
Where should clinicians and owners go to see a short demo or start a 30-day trial? And what's the simplest first step to pilot in one clinic with maybe a small cohort?
So you can go to found.care. That's our website. And there you can see a quick demo, or you can click to schedule one if you want to do a live walkthrough with us. We're happy to do that. You can also get access to the platform there without actually having to sign up initially. And then you can start your free trial after that. And then if somebody wants to start their whole team, then you can just contact us and we can get you started really quickly. It's just a matter of you letting us know, giving us some emails, and you're good to go.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this has been great, Christina. So much. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Wellness Growth Show. If today's conversation sparked something for you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the stories, strategies, and insights from the front lines of wellness innovation. If you're a founder, operator, or health leader exploring growth into institutional markets and have a story worth telling, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out directly on LinkedIn or YouTube. And if you found this valuable, share it with a peer or post it online. You never know who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay well, keep moving, and keep building what matters.